Ever wish information came with like a personalized roadmap,
Yeah.
guiding you to exactly what you need to know?
Roadmap.
Yeah, that's kind of the big dream behind knowledge organization, right? And so, today's deep dive, it's all about domain analysis,
All right.
one of its most powerful tools. We're exploring a collection of academic articles
All right.
and even a YouTube video transcript,
Wow.
all focused on domain analysis in information science.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's really interesting because each piece tackles domain analysis a bit differently,
Oh, that's cool.
but they all converge on this core idea, creating a detailed map of a specific knowledge area. And we call that a domain.
So it's like mapping a territory.
Yeah.
But instead of mountains and rivers, we're charting concepts and theories.
Precisely. And just like a geographical map, a domain analysis helps you navigate the landscape. Instead of getting lost in, information overload,
Yeah.
you can see the key landmarks, understand the terrain, and find your way around.
Okay, that makes sense. But why should I care about this?
Yeah.
Is this just for, academics or librarians?
Not at all.
Really?
Think about it.
Okay.
How often do you find yourself, wading through endless search results?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Or struggling to make sense of a complex topic?
Right.
Domain analysis can help you cut through all that noise and get to the heart of what matters within any field.
That sounds promising,
It is.
especially for someone like me who's, always trying to learn new things. So how does this mapping actually work?
Good question.
What are we, looking for when we analyze a domain?
Well, first, we need to understand what makes up a domain. It could be anything, really.
Oh, wow.
Biology, law, music, even something as niche as 18th century French poetry.
Wow.
Each domain has its unique structure and DNA, so to speak.
So we're not just talking about keywords here, right?
Definitely not. Domain analysis goes much deeper. It's about identifying the key concepts, the important theories, the dominant research trends, and even the communication patterns and social structures within that field.
Wow, that's quite a lot. I'm already seeing how this could get complex.
Right. That's where different approaches come in.
Okay.
One researcher, Berger Heerland, identified 11 different approaches to domain analysis.
11.
Yeah.
That's a lot of options.
It is, each with its own focus and methods.
Can you give me a taste of what some of these approaches look like?
Absolutely. One approach focuses on studying the language used within a domain. Imagine analyzing legal documents, the specific terminology, the way arguments are structured.
Oh, interesting.
It can reveal a lot about the power dynamics and hidden assumptions at play within the legal system.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about what's being said, but also how it's being said.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another approach involves analyzing the historical evolution of a field. By tracing how a domain has changed over time, we can understand the key events, the influential thinkers, and the major shifts in thinking that have shaped the domain we see today.
That reminds me of one of the papers you shared. The one about using domain analysis to improve the organization of scientific reports submitted to a Brazilian agency.
Yeah.
They were looking at how the field has evolved and how that impacts the evaluation of research.
Yes. That's a great example of how domain analysis can have real-world implications.
Cool.
It's not just an academic exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It can be used to improve systems, make information more accessible, and even influence how research is funded.
I'm starting to see the potential here. But it seems like analyzing a whole field of knowledge must be a massive undertaking. Where do you even begin?
Well, one of the key starting points is identifying the key players within a domain.
Okay.
That's where the concept of discourse communities comes into play.
This is a term that's come up a lot in our sources, but I'm still not quite clear on what it means.
Think of a discourse community as a group of people who share a common interest in a particular domain. They might communicate through specific journals, conferences, online forums, or even informal gatherings. What defines a discourse community is their shared interest and the ways they communicate about that interest.
So, scientists working on climate change would be a discourse community.
Yes.
But so would fans of a particular video game.
Uh-huh.
They both have their own ways of communicating and sharing knowledge.
At play. And each discourse community has its own set of norms, values, and ways of seeing the world. Understanding these communities is essential for effective domain analysis.
This reminds me of something the speaker in the YouTube video brought up.
Yeah.
The idea that even experts within a field can sometimes benefit from stepping back and doing a formal domain analysis.
You're right. He argued that sometimes our deep familiarity with a subject can make us blind to certain aspects of it. By taking a systematic approach, we can reveal hidden assumptions, identify knowledge gaps, and ultimately gain a deeper understanding of the domain.
That's a great point. It's like we need to become outsiders to our own areas of expertise in order to truly understand them.
And it's not just about understanding the content of a domain. It's about understanding the people who create and use that knowledge, their perspectives, their needs, their ways of communicating. All of that shapes the landscape of a domain.
So it's like we're looking at a knowledge landscape through two lenses simultaneously.
Yeah.
One lens for the content
Yeah.
and another lens for the community.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
And by combining those perspectives, we can start to see how knowledge is produced, shared, and ultimately how it shapes the world around us.
Okay, I'm really starting to grasp the power of this approach. Let's dive into some more specific examples of how domain analysis is being used in action. I'm curious to see how this all plays out in the real world. Let's get practical. I'm eager to see how domain analysis is actually being used. You mentioned a paper about improving scientific reports in Brazil.
Right.
What were they trying to achieve with domain analysis?
Well, that particular study, it highlighted the gap between the highly specialized language used in scientific reports and the terms used in indexing systems. By applying domain analysis, they were trying to bridge that gap, essentially making scientific research more findable and understandable.
That's a crucial point, especially now when research is more accessible than ever.
It is.
But finding the right research amidst that vast sea of information, it can feel impossible.
Precisely. And another study we've got here dives into user needs within different domains.
Oh, interesting.
It emphasizes how different communities interact with knowledge in their own unique ways.
Gotcha.
Domain analysis helps us tailor information systems to meet those specific needs.
So, like, a medical database would be organized very differently from a database for music lovers.
Absolutely. Domain analysis reminds us that context is everything. Knowledge isn't created in a vacuum. It's embedded within social structures, historical contexts, and even power dynamics.
That's a really important point, understanding the why behind the what. You know? But I have to admit, sometimes this all feels a bit abstract. Could we break down some key concepts in simpler terms?
Of course. Let's revisit domain.
Okay.
It's simply a specific area of knowledge, be it scientific, professional, a hobby, or even a social movement.
Okay.
Anything with its own set of concepts, practices, and ways of communicating.
So biology would be a domain.
Yes.
But so would knitting or street art.
Okay, cool. And discourse community, remember?
Right.
It's just a group of people sharing a common interest in a domain.
Okay.
They communicate through specific channels, journals, conferences, online forums, even informal meetups.
So climate change scientists are a discourse community.
Right.
As are fans of a particular video game.
Exactly. It's their shared interest and unique communication that binds them.
This really clarifies things. So domain analysis helps us understand both the content of a domain and the community shaping that content. It's like two sides of the same coin.
A perfect analogy. And remember, one of our papers used software to map the relationships between key concepts in a journal. That's domain analysis in action.
Very cool.
It helped visualize how ideas connect within a specific discourse community.
Speaking of visualizations, one of the diagrams in our research really struck me. It presented a flow chart for gathering data during a domain analysis. Can we unpack that a bit?
That's a great one. It breaks the process down into three key components. The structure of communication, the patterns of communication, and the language used. It's like a roadmap for understanding how knowledge flows within a domain.
Let's break those down one by one.
All right.
What exactly do we mean by structure of communication?
It's all about understanding who is communicating, who their audience is, and what channels they use. Mapping the flow of knowledge, essentially. Like in a scientific domain, we'd look at journals, conferences, research institutions, even funding agencies.
So identifying the key players and their connections within that domain, it's like creating a social network.
Exactly.
But for knowledge sharing.
Now, patterns of communication digs into the how and why. What are the dominant theories, research trends, methodologies? What's the historical evolution of the field and the key events that shaped its trajectory?
Ah, so we're looking not just at who's talking, but also what they're saying and how those ideas have evolved over time.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about grasping the intellectual landscape of a domain.
Right.
And finally, we have language used,
Right.
which might seem straightforward, but there's a lot more to it than just the words themselves.
This reminds me of our conversation about power dynamics,
Yes.
how language can reveal who holds power
Mm-hmm.
and how knowledge is controlled within a domain.
Exactly. Remember the example of environmental activism.
Yeah.
Terms like sustainability or climate justice
Right.
are used and contested by different groups reflecting their values and struggles.
That's a great illustration. It shows how language reflects the values, beliefs,
Yes.
and power dynamics within a domain.
Mm-hmm.
It's never truly neutral.
And it's worth noting that the language used within a domain can change over time, reflecting shifts in thinking, priorities, or even social movements.
This makes it all feel so dynamic and interconnected. It seems
Yeah.
like domain analysis is about understanding a specific area of knowledge,
Yeah.
the community shaping that knowledge, and the language they use to communicate.
You've got it. It's a holistic approach,
Right.
recognizing that information doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's woven into a complex web of social, historical, and ideological threads.
And understanding those threads can impact everything from designing better search systems to understanding how knowledge is created and shared.
That's the beauty of it. It's a powerful, versatile tool,
Right.
applicable to any domain imaginable.
That's what makes it so exciting.
I know.
It's a lens for understanding the world around us,
It is.
from the scientific to the everyday.
Yeah.
But with all this talk about domains and communities, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Does domain analysis uncover anything about the broader landscape of knowledge itself?
That's a fascinating question. And it leads us to some of the most compelling insights
Okay.
that have emerged from this field.
Very
One of the most striking is the realization that knowledge is not objective or neutral.
Right.
It's shaped by the social and historical context in which it's produced.
That theme came up repeatedly in the YouTube video,
He did.
especially in the discussion of classification systems.
Exactly. The speaker argued that even systems designed to appear objective,
Right.
like library classifications,
Yeah.
are inevitably influenced by the values and biases
Okay.
of the people who create them.
He gave a really thought-provoking example, classifying a book about the history of sexuality.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the cultural and historical context,
Right.
that book could end up in very different sections of a library.
Precisely. What's considered scientific in one context
Right.
could be deemed controversial or even dangerous in another.
Wow.
Domain analysis helps us recognize these different perspectives
Okay.
and how they shape the organization of knowledge.
It also highlights the limitations
Right.
of striving for a single universal classification system. One size fits all just doesn't work
It doesn't.
when it comes to knowledge.
Exactly. A system designed for one discourse community
Yeah.
might not make sense for another.
Right.
It's like forcing square pegs into round holes.
Another aha moment for me was realizing that domain analysis isn't just about understanding existing domains.
Oh, interesting.
It can also help anticipate future trends and emerging areas of knowledge.
That's a great point.
Right.
By analyzing the language, networks, and research trends within a domain, we can get a glimpse of where the field is heading and what new knowledge gaps might emerge.
It's like peering into a crystal ball for knowledge.
In a way, yes. It helps us make informed decisions about research priorities, resource allocation,
Right.
and even educational programs.
So domain analysis has implications not just for how we organize information, but also for how we create and share new knowledge.
Absolutely. It's a
Okay.
dynamic process
Mm.
that constantly evolves alongside the domains it analyzes.
This brings us to a key question.
Oh.
Who benefits from domain analysis? Who should be paying attention to this field?
In short, everyone who interacts with information, which is pretty much everyone,
Sure.
but more specifically, it's especially valuable for anyone involved in knowledge organization. Librarians, archivists, information scientists, database designers.
And let's not forget researchers.
Oh, of course.
They can use domain analysis to understand the landscape of their field, identify knowledge gaps, and develop more effective research strategies.
Of course. And educators can use it to design curricula aligned with the latest research and needs of specific communities.
It even has implications for policymakers,
Right.
who can use it to understand complex fields and make more informed decisions.
Yeah.
Domain analysis seems relevant across so many fields.
It's true. It's a versatile tool
It is.
with the potential to transform how we think about, organize, and use information in a variety of contexts.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
It happens.
But before we wrap things up, what's the one takeaway you hope our listeners will remember from this episode? This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. But before we wrap things up, what's the one takeaway you hope our listeners will remember from this episode?
If I had to pick just one,
Okay.
it would be this. Knowledge isn't static or objective.
Right.
It's a living thing,
Mm-hmm.
constantly being shaped by the communities that create and use it.
Yeah.
And domain analysis,
Yeah.
it gives us the tools to grasp that complexity
Yep.
and navigate the ever-evolving world of information.
That's a great way to sum it up. It really challenges us to think differently about how we approach knowledge and information.
It does.
And speaking of challenges,
Mhm.
our deep dive today has focused on domain analysis in specific fields like law, biology, and information science. But I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what about the listener's own domain?
That's the exciting part.
Oh, okay.
Domain analysis isn't limited to academic subjects. It can be applied to any area of knowledge.
So whether you're passionate about ancient history,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
fascinated by artificial intelligence,
Right.
or even deeply invested in a particular online community,
Exactly.
domain analysis can offer a new perspective.
Exactly. It can help you uncover the hidden structures, the key players, the language, and the power dynamics at play
Wow.
within your own area of interest.
That's a powerful thought. It's like we're giving our listeners a new set of lenses to view the world around them.
And not just view it, but understand it more deeply.
Right.
To see the connections, the influences, and the evolution of ideas within any domain.
This has been a truly eye-opening exploration of domain analysis.
It has.
But as with any good deep dive,
Yeah.
it leaves us with more questions than answers.
And that's a good thing.
Right?
It sparks curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and encourages us to keep exploring.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
What's your domain?
Ooh.
What unique knowledge landscape do you inhabit?
Good question.
How could domain analysis help you understand the concepts, language, and networks that shape your work, your hobbies, or even your personal learning journey?
Take these tools and go explore. You might be surprised by what you discover.
That's all for this deep dive into domain analysis. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep diving deep.